All right, what is up, everybody? I'm Tristan, aka Tristan the Meat Man. Today I'm going to be showing you how I break down a chuck roll. We're going to be pulling out one or two chuck eye pieces from this front piece, which is connected to the rib loin. And then we're going to go through, pull out a couple chuck roasts, and then we're going to go out and pull a couple chuck steaks. First off, let's pull it out of the bag. Let's get it nice and trimmed up. All right, let's go ahead and get this pulled out of the bag. Forgot to grab the trash can. Sorry about that.
Check, please.
Sorry about that. I am a grocery store meat department manager, so it's gonna happen probably. Okay, so what I like to do first things first is go ahead and flip this over and start on this belly side of it, mainly because this is where the most ugly pieces are. As you can see, we got this right here. This is nice and like very smooth, but this is what is protecting the meat from the bone. So there's a bone laying right here in this area, and this helps the bone just kind of work away across it so it doesn't dig into the meat. You can keep it on there, but I don't recommend it. It's going to not taste good at all after you cook it up. So I just always take it out. Always sticking as close as you can to that silver skinish area on that backside of it. Trying to pull out the least bit of meat that you can. Here in a grocery store, all the meat that doesn't get sold is basically waste. It's basically lost money, so want to make sure we're not losing any money in here. There was also a bone right up here in this area too, so that's also why I take it out. So after we got all that nice and trimmed out of there, I like to go ahead and just kind of take out this slimy, goopy, fatty, silver skinish stuff. So again, just get right underneath it. Oh, and by the way, this is my 9-inch Knife Pro cutlery knife. I also have an 11-inch steak knife that I will be showing you here in just a little bit. But you can find those linked on my TikTok in my showcase. Fairly good, really good price. Sorry about that. Just kind of just working our way through this really thin stuff. Not really worth leaving on there. Just makes it look ugly. Kind of take out this fat a little bit. Nice little fat pocket right here. Get that out. Got a little bone right here. All right, I'd consider that good enough. Be able to flip it back over. And now as you can see, we got all these marks and a little bit of discolored beef. The discolored beef is just due to the cryovac seal. While it was sealing, it kind of just sucked all that air out of that oxygen out of that meat. So it just kind of discolored it a little bit. So we got these like little bone fragments that I'm taking out right now up here. And again, this is where that bone was resting. So we got this protective layer that we're just gonna go ahead and take on out. Really nitpicky about it. I like to make sure I get it all out just how I am. Now after we get all that out, Okay, I'm just gonna go through and take out all that discolored meat right here on the top. Not going into the meat that far, just taking out a very thin layer of it, because again, that is all money that we will be missing from a steak price. All this does get ground down into ground beef. All this stuff that I deem worthy enough to be good enough trim. Take this little fat pocket out right here. Right now, a little trick that I was shown was to just kind of like skim this layer out right here. It's nice and it's a big old area. You don't want to spend too much time always just trying to, when you have a lot to cut, you don't want to spend too much time on just one area. So a little trick that I was told is kind of like shave it out with your bigger knife. Again, you're just barely hitting that top layer. Not really getting too into the meat. And then we've gone ahead and prettied that up basically right over here on that side, as you can see. Let's go ahead and squaring it up. Now we're gonna have this piece right here that's just kind of flapping on out of here. I like to kind of leave it on more up here. This is just flap, this is just extra, so we can go ahead and take this off. And I'll go ahead and rework this into some stew meat. I'll go ahead and clean all this off, and I can either make that in some stew meat or stir fry. So I just set that off to the side. But as you can see, we got this big old fat piece right here. That gets taken off, but a good way to see that it gets taken off is we got this pretty little wedge piece right here. It's a good spot to just follow with your knife. That takes out that big fat spot. And again, we can go ahead and repurpose this into some stew meat if there's some thick enough meat in here, but this is just all kind of just flimsy enough that I'm just gonna cut it down, put it into my trim bucket. Now we got that all nice and trimmed up for the most part. Now let's go ahead and cut off our first two steaks that are going to be our chuck eyes. So chuck eyes are a poor man's ribeye because this is the end that's connected to that rib loin. So when we cut it off, kind of cut it a little thick. That chuck eye is this bottom part right here. So we're gonna go ahead and take off another one real quick, and I'll show you what we have to do to get to that chuck eye. So to get to that chuck eye, we gotta separate these two pieces of meat. That's kind of why they're not found too often. They're kind of hidden gems. And if they do get cut, usually the meat cutter here in the back, 9 times out of 10 usually takes them home for himself because we know how good of cuts these are. But that's how you get your chuck eye right there. So that front two pieces off your chuck roll, go ahead and set those off to the side. And these, it's the same thing as those other pieces of meat that we've been taking off. We're just gonna end up repurposing this into some stew meat basically. So we'll just go ahead and take this fat piece off. There's gonna be a little bit of meat on it. Put that into the trim bucket, set that off to the side, come back to a little bit later. And then again, kind of follow this fat seam on out of here. And do what you can to repurpose this meat as well for some stew meat. But now to get back to this chuck roll, I like to go ahead and just cut this off now. Use this for some stew meat later. No point in cutting it off when you're already going to be taking it off with the chuck eye, so that's why I just leave it on. Well, what I like to do is we got this big old fat deposit right here. I like to leave that in for the roasts because chuck roasts are a good crock pot roast. So you leave it in the crock pot with that fat. It's going to produce even more of those meat juices, and it's going to flavor that broth even more. So we're going to go ahead and we'll cut about a roast right there. And this is my 11-inch Knife Pro Cutlery steak knife. I use this every day. And again, we still got that fat right in there, so we're going to go ahead and take out another roast. Not as thick because this is about the widest part of the chuck roast or the chuck roll, so this is just a little bit of bruising, nothing really to worry about there if you ever see that. But now that big old fat deposit's kind of just down here, so we can go ahead and cut some steaks out of this. Try my best to get this nice and straight. So when I'm cutting these for family packs, it's 2 steaks to a family pack. I'll sometimes leave them whole. Put 2 into a family pack, but that kind of increases the price here in a grocery store dramatically. So I tend to cut them in half, and it's just 1 big steak per package, but it's cut in half, so it looks like it's 2 steaks. And they've been kind of just flying on out of here this week. So we're going to go ahead and get a couple more of these on out of here. And then for the individual steaks, I'll just cut them in half and put a half of a chuck steak into a smaller tray. And that seems to work. So we got 4. 5 steaks out of there. We'll go ahead and leave this last one for another roast. So we got 3 roasts, 5 chuck steaks, 2 chuck eye steaks. So out of that whole chuck roll, we ended up with 2 chuck eye steaks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 regular chuck steaks, and 1, 2, 3 chuck roasts. The meat I'll repurpose for some stew meat. And then just a little bit of trim that I produced for ground beef. Now, if you liked what you saw today, make sure you follow and subscribe to the YouTube page. And if you're not following on the TikTok, go ahead and follow me on the TikTok too, because that's where you'll see more of the same content that I'll be posting here as well. Thank you for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day.